I think it's the hyper specialty movement needs to understand that the consumer needs to feel respected. You talked about the ego aspect, and I've seen it firsthand. I've gone to some cafes and like, man, to treat a customer like an idiot, like condescendingly and
Constantly.
rudely, and is just, I don't understand. Like, and again, these are people that should not be in business.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 5 of a 5-part series. And folks, before I move on, if you are listening to this and you are thinking about coming to World of Coffee Dubai, please come say hi. We are the official podcast partner for World of Coffee Dubai. Please come, stop by, say hi, and see the podcast being recorded live. Martin, I hope that you're going to be there. I know you're still undecided about whether you're going to be there. We'll see. Yeah. But Martin and Mayorga is with us in this series. We're talking about the state of the coffee supply chain. I believe that the whole thing is a bubble at the moment, particularly on the consuming end of the market. And I believe that when that bubble bursts, that there's going to be ripple effects that flow back into the supply chain. Now, we've looked at things from the perspective of the producer, the exporter, trader, importer, roaster, cafe owner. And in this episode, we're going to look at things from the perspective of the consumer. Now, we in specialty coffee tend to wax poetic about how educated the consumer is, and yet I don't believe that to be true. I think that from a marketing company that I have been working with for a client of mine recently, they did an extreme amount of research on this. And what the consumer is saying right now when it comes to specialty coffee, that specialty coffee are snobs. And that specialty coffee make the consumer feel isolated. Specialty coffee makes the consumer feel dumb, and specialty coffee makes the consumer feel just not good about themselves. They run from specialty coffee. Well, where do you see things at the moment for the consumer, Martin?
I think the consumer obviously always benefits from options. I think the options are going to be more limited but better as they're thinning out over the next X number of months and maybe years. Personally, I have a lot of empathy for consumers because I think they've been used. I think, one of the things that irks me the most is these people who are so uneducated about what really happens in our countries where we grow coffee. And they just have this like, pay more for coffee, pay more for coffee. It's almost like you're going to blame the consumer for something the industry did over the last 200 years. And almost basically, in my opinion, say, I don't care about you. You fix this problem. Take the money you've worked hard to earn to feed your family and take care of your family and create a future for them. And you come fix this. It's so lazy and I think almost like abusive to a consumer that I think consumers have a right and a reason to be like, no, like you do better. You as an industry fix this. Fine. Give me great quality. I'll pay for that. But I think what's happened now is, like you said, a lot of that great quality has come with arrogance. It has come with, I'm not going to go to where you are as a consumer because you like dark roast coffee. I don't believe in it. And it's not even I don't believe in it. I've been told not to believe in it. I've been told not to believe in blends. I've been told not to. So now I'm going to pretend I don't believe in it because now I'm going to be part of this cool club of brands and competitors and competitions, et cetera. And I feel safe in that world, which has never really been a real part of the scale of the industry. And I think consumers are going to now get a layer of peeling the onion back and be like, oh, wait, so these people weren't really doing this and this wasn't really happening. And frankly, I think consumers, rightfully so, are going to kind of dig their heels and say, look, I'm going to buy the best coffee I can buy with my resources. But no offense, coffee's not my top priority. Nor should it be. We could, vilify consumers about anything. Look, I have an iPhone. I've heard stories about what happens in the plants that make iPhones, where they have to put nets outside the buildings because so many people are killing themselves. I'm a hypocrite if I say I care about people who make these things, because clearly I have one and I'll buy the new one. So I have to come to grips with that. And I think that, frankly, the industry needs to be held to a better standard and we have to do what we can, but we can't do it on everything. And I think coffee people think that consumers should care. Consumers care about their family, their health, their well-being, their future. And if coffee is a part of it, make it the best you can as an industry. Make it affordable to them, make it sustainable, do it right, do your job to source well, to treat the people you work with well. Talk about that, explain it, educate the consumer with the education you've earned, not with, putting yourself on a soapbox, and just understand the consumer's just trying to live their life, like take a little pressure from them,
Yeah.
first and foremost. Now, as a consumer, I think it'd almost be, I don't know if it'll be much different, frankly, because I see the consumer differently than maybe a lot of people listening to this podcast, which is it's not the person coming in for a V60 into the local cafe and being willing to pay $17 or some
Mm.
exorbitant crazy. I see a consumer, somebody's like, hey, I got to get to work. I want a nice coffee. I have this nice bag of coffee sitting on my counter. I'm going to grind it. I'm going to brew it, put it in a to-go cup, drink it on the way to work and feel happy about it. And maybe at night when I have nothing to do, I'll pull up the QR code on that bag and learn that they actually source nicely and they represent their community and they have values and they have a purpose. I feel good about that. End of story. Um, I just think the consumer needs to only benefit from products. And I think that
Mhm.
at this point, we need to kind of, I keep saying we, but it's not me. The industry that has exploited, to be honest, and look, we don't talk enough about that. The words fair and equitable and all these things that are thrown around so much in our industry, people are so unfair to consumers.
Folks, our first on-demand workshop, How to Become a Coffee Consultant, is now available for you to learn at your own pace, and it comes with a certificate upon completion. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for more details. Support this podcast by supporting our sponsors.
I've seen people, buy coffee that they, I pay a great price at $3.20 for, $3.50. They buy the same coffee from a trader who bought from another trader at $4.50, and then they go sell it to the consumer at a completely inflated price. The same coffee I'm buying for less and selling for much less, you know. And I'll be very honest. I've had traders that will threaten farms that they won't buy from them if they sell to me, because their roaster consumers or customers will say, "Well, how does Mayorga sell the same coffee so cheap?" You know, and the truth is because we do it directly and we're fair to consumers.
Mhm.
And I think fairness to consumers needs to be brought back into the equation because we've forgotten that consumers are people also. And it's like we've taken humanity out of the supply chain. You know, I want my consumers to feel good about what they're buying from me because it tastes great, it's consistent, but it's also price fair. My
Mhm.
job is make organic specialty grade coffee that's been produced and grown in a healthy way for the environment, a healthy way for my farmers, a healthy way for my consumers, to make it accessible. It's that simple. And it goes back to the conversation about margin and profit and P&Ls. If I have to forego 5% of my net income, give 2.5% to the producer, give 2.5% to the consumer as value, then I'm going to do that. And guess what? My job every day is to maximize not shareholder value, but producer income, my staff's income and well-being, and consumer value.
Mhm.
That's what every company should focus on. I think what the consumer is going to see is just companies that are run better, and they're going to offer them better pricing, more efficient business pricing models, and a lot of cool innovation, to be honest, in cold brew and a lot of different preparation methods. But I think it's the hyper specialty movement needs to understand that the consumer needs to feel respected. You talked about the ego aspect, and I've seen it firsthand. I've gone to some cafes and like, man, to treat a customer like an idiot, like condescendingly and
Constantly.
rudely, and it's like, it's just, I don't understand. Like, and again, these are people that should not be in business. The same people that can't read a P&L have hit most likely the same people who don't understand that the customer pays their bills. And I tell my
Mhm.
staff this all the time. I don't pay you. Our customers pay you. If our customers aren't paying us, you're not getting paid. So let's make sure the customer's happy, which seems very basic, right? You would think it's common sense, but I think it's been lost. I think the consumer is going to benefit from a shakeout. I think the consumer is going to benefit from some realities coming out, and from innovation. And I think it's a good thing. Unfortunately, that consumer is also dealing with the higher rates and the inflation
Mm.
and, overall higher costs. So frankly, I think the consumer is going to be looking for value more than story.
Why do you think that business owners don't listen to the consumer? Why do you think that they don't ask consumers questions?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that somehow, some way over the last 12 years or so, Look, I tell people all the time, when I started my business, I was in college and I was poised to be a Wall Street guy. And I decided to start my business and I became an entrepreneur. I hated that word. I thought it was tacky. When I was starting that in the mid late 90s, I was a loser because this is a guy who can't even go get a job. And, he's going to school for finance and you were kind of a loser if you're an entrepreneur. You didn't call yourself on it. You're kind of like this, like, ugh, it was kind of icky. Like, oh, this guy, like,
Okay.
entrepreneur, like wearing a purple suit or some, like it wasn't
Right.
thought of as it is now. I think culturally, there's new movement of entrepreneurial endeavors has been put into this. Like, I have family members, young men who are in their 20s, who really think their goal is to have a private jet.
Oh,
I'm
Jesus.
like, and
Seriously?
hardworking, good, smart kids, but like that's what the culture has taught them.
Wow.
So we
Okay.
have these fake entrepreneurs out there, to be honest,
Yeah.
because an entrepreneur is going to see a need, see a challenge, see an
Solve the
opportunity, and do
problem.
whatever it takes to solve it, and do whatever it takes to make that impact. Um, I think we just have a lot of fake business owners right now. In my opinion, to start a business and not being, you should not start a business if you're not financially savvy, meaning you can read a P&L, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement, or you don't have somebody in house who 100% is. And by the way, that you're watching, because that same person could also steal from you, which happens.
Screw you over. I've seen it many, many
So
times.
I think it's that. I think just people are forgetting what a business is and what the ultimate reality of any business is. What is the market? I'll never forget a presentation I did for a very large client in like 2005. And the heading was market-driven sustainability. And ultimately it was, this is the market. Here's a problem. We just need to align those two things. And it's
Yeah.
like, it clicks and it fits perfectly and it works. What a lot of these new age entrepreneurs think, here's what I want to do. Here's what's cool. Here's what the industry likes. Come here, consumer, come to me. That's not how the way the world works. If somebody likes, I don't know, a SUV, 4-wheel drive vehicle, you're not going to convince them to buy, a 2-seat convertible.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go where the market is. And I think that's part of the lack of education, lack of knowledge, lack of humility, and overinflated ego, which is, I'm going to do this so well and it's going to be so cool that you'd be an idiot not to support it. You'd be an idiot not to buy this coffee because dark roast is gross, because blends are terrible, because this and that, because that's not reality. I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the first things you should do is understand your market. And look, if your market is only hyper specialty coffees and only certain process, then understand that that's a limited market. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I want to be very clear. Like, I don't believe everybody should do what Mayorga is doing. I do believe that you should be honest. I do believe that you should have a purpose that aligns with what you truly do. Meaning, if you say you're doing something, you should actually be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's room for everybody. There's room for the multinationals. There's room for commercial grade coffee. There's
100%.
room. I think we just need to do our best to not fuck up the planet, impoverish people, and kill hope and dreams, which is what I've seen happen. I mean, it literally makes me so sad. And I've told my son this. I've met some brilliant people that are coffee farmers who have no hope left,
Mm-hmm.
who can't even like realize the power of their mind and their capacities because their systems put in place that won't even allow them to take advantage of that. And to me, that's inhuman. You cannot do that to people. You should never do that to people. Yet it happens. And it's
Mm-hmm.
part of the standard way of doing business. So, I think the consumer needs to be forgiven as far as like, we can't put this on them. It's on us. But I do think consumers are educated and I do think consumers care.
Mm-hmm.
I think unfortunately consumers have to be careful because I think at least in the US, which is really, I mean, we do business US, Canada, Europe, but really the US is our big market. I think consumers believe that there's some government entity out there that is making sure that things that are said on a bag are true. If you
Surely
put
the
it on the bag and
pandemic stopped that from happening.
it's just crazy. And people think, and the things people say and get away with
Yeah, it's quite
is
bizarre.
shocking to me.
Yeah.
It angers. It's funny. My team and I will share stuff on our WhatsApp group, and like, I think a new one we came out that we saw come out was like ceremonial grade coffees and this, and like, man, the things people will say and do,
It's
and
that
like,
trends thing we were talking about, right? To convince
yeah,
people to buy new coffee. That's the
yeah.
fuckery that I'm talking about that's coming up.
I just think a lot of consumers honestly don't. We have to recognize consumers don't see coffee the way we do, and they shouldn't.
No.
It's not their job; it's our job.
Yeah.
Um, my customers love our Cubano roast, super dark, very Latin. Why? Because that's what they grew up drinking, or they love the flavors that coffee they drank when they were in Latin America, whatever it is. That's what we give them.
Mhm.
It's what I like too, by coincidence. But hey, we have family time right now for the holidays. I roast my coffee here. I brew it, and I prepared like a natural process from one of our producers. Most of my family here, we actually in my house we have two different brewers. We have mine and my wife's, which is
Mhm.
all the like light roast kind of, and then the dark roast stuff for the
For
family. And
everyone
then
else.
yeah. And I'm 50. I drink Cubano and stuff too, but imagine if you were a company. It's like, well, literally in my house, the preference is 90% the dark roast, muy
Mhm.
macho, Cubano, all that stuff. So imagine if you start a company, you're like, yeah, you like that, but you're wrong because you should like this.
It's
They're
not
not
gonna
going to come
work.
your way. And if they do, it's a process of education and preference changing. And maybe you give them something more of a medium roast, and it has to be intentional. You have to intentionally move them that way. But you can't just expect the market to jump through hoops because you want them to or need them to. It's very ignorant, to be honest.
Well, and I'm not sure that the juice is worth the squeeze when it comes to that. The long game, there are bigger problems that we need to solve than making
Amen.
consumers,
Amen.
drink fucking specialty coffee. And I don't have a problem with specialty coffee. I think that every coffee has a customer. What I think is that we are so hell bent on this bravado that comes with what we do that we have put ourselves in a corner, and that corner doesn't fit as many people as people think it does.
No, it's a
And
tiny little corner.
it's
But let me
tiny.
make something clear too. We keep using the word specialty. Hyper specialty is the term I use because
Right.
what is specialty coffee? I mean,
That's
first
what
of all,
I
we're
meant.
talking about a
Hyper
segment
specialty.
that hasn't even defined itself. It's like
No.
specialty to most people. It's like, what does it mean? Oh, it's better. It's smaller. Look, specialty was originally defined by CA as 80 points plus.
Mhm.
So technically, any coffee, and to me, 82, 83, distinctive flavors, distinctive notes, whatever it might be, uh, no primary defects, very little to no secondaries. Like that's specialty coffee. We are a specialty coffee company,
Yep.
whether
So
people
is
out there want to believe it
Starbucks.
or not. Exactly. So let's also understand because it could be easy for people to think that, well, you're vilifying specialty because you're not. We're very specialty. Um, I think that at the end of the day, you mentioned something very important, which is there's a lot bigger and more important, more human, more, community, more just future impacting things out there. And for me, that's what it all boils down to.
Mhm.
I will never care more about coffee than I care about people. I'm
Well,
sorry if that makes me a bad coffee company owner. I'm sorry. I tell people all
not
the
at
time
all.
when I'm at Origin and the cupping table is loaded up and everybody's ready to go, I said, I'm not going to sit here and judge your work in front of you and tell you what it's worth to me. You guys cup it. My Q graders, Eduardo and Beatriz, who this is what they do, will cup it and kind of help identify characteristics and points or whatever. But to me, this was never about coffee. Frankly, I think that's what our success is all about. This was never and will never be about coffee. It will always be about people. I'm a coffee company owner who sells less coffee than chia, who sells almost as much beans as coffee. Who in 2024, my model is I'm going to expand that and ideally quadruple that business. And coffee will be 25% of my business. Why? Because the communities and the people in the countries that I work with
Mhm.
are all subject to the same shit model that has impoverished coffee communities. And I need to do something. And if my ego needs to kind of take a back seat to the coffee industry, thinking I'm not a coffee person because I sell all these other products, and I don't care because I'm seeing positive impact where I work. That's all I want to do. And that's what I want to teach my children. And I want to influence the industry and I want to influence my staff and my team. And frankly, that's all that matters to me,
Mhm.
when it comes to the business is what is our impact? Even our own team, are we giving them the best health insurance? Are we giving them the best retirement plan? What are you doing if you're not waking up every day to make a positive impact? You know, it's just life's too short. We got one shot at it. There's
Mm.
too many problems out there to put any product on some pedestal that is then going to make you feel good about yourself because you put on a freaking apron and won some stupid competition because your cup of coffee looks prettier than other people's. I'm sorry if that matters to you,
Don't be
great.
sorry.
But in the scheme of life, it's so fucking irrelevant and it's insulting to people who literally are trying to feed their families and not being able to do so.
Well, and what's happening now, this bubble that's bursting is really gonna show people how irrelevant that is. These people who kept saying the coffee competitions is where innovation gets shown to the industry and it's where innovation happens. People who are saying that coffee competitions are what really elevate producers. I'm sorry, but I have been saying on this podcast, and other people have been saying on this podcast for 6 years now, that is utter rubbish. And now people are going to start to see what really matters. When things start going away, or as when, Warren Buffett says, when the tide's going out, now we're going to see what's what. We're really going to start to see who's been talking shit this whole time and who's been building a sustainable business. And the people who have built a sustainable business are going to win big in this time. They are going to have access to capital that allows them to buy companies that are going out of business, which means that they get to benefit from those leases. They get to benefit from all the other assets that that company has. They get to benefit from the supply chains. And so they should. So they fucking should. They built sustainably. And for those who don't think that it is hard work building for the long term, it's painful. If you build for the
It's a
long
lot of
game,
work. Yeah.
you earn the right to call yourself an entrepreneur when you build for the long game. You really do.
Yeah. And you mentioned the word, and I've mentioned it a lot, which is innovation. And I believe so firmly that our biggest opportunity to innovate in this industry is supply chain.
Word.
Yet nobody wants to do it. Why do I say that? Because we have a supply chain that was established 200 years ago when the commodities market and commodities trade was necessary to establish some sort of controls and kind of predictability. But frankly, a function of the ability to manipulate and kind of keep the market away from the producer and kind of have this little thing in the middle that made everybody money. But I always say the biggest innovation opportunity in coffee is creating new supply chains, whether it's direct trade, whatever you want to call it. And I've seen people pretend to with blockchain, and I'm like, well, you're just a digital trader now because your blockchain model expects me to pay you for every pound I move and blah, blah, blah. But our biggest opportunity for innovation is fix this fucking supply chain that has impoverished communities, people, countries. That is innovation to me. It's changing people's trajectory in life and impacting their grandchildren in a positive way. To me, that's how I want to innovate. And that's all I want to innovate in doing.
And on that, if anyone has not heard of the DMCC here in Dubai, the DMCC is doing some awesome things long term to try and position the supply chain in a very interesting way. So check it out. And if you do need any information, contact us and we can put you in contact with them. I have some information on the back end of what they're doing, and it's really exciting the way that they're trying to reposition. Like the guy who's heading it up, Saeed is a super, super smart cat. And I can tell you the things and the ideas that he has for the coffee supply chain and how to use the trade routes that come through the Arabian Peninsula is super fucking smart. Jump on it, check it out and see if it's something that will work for you. Martin, I can't thank you enough for this series. I feel like it was a cathartic way to start the year and a really cathartic way to get ready for what I think is going to be a very definitive and formative time of the history of our industry. It couldn't have been anyone but you. So thank you for doing this.
No, of course. And look, I want to make it clear. I don't wish anybody to struggle. I want everybody to succeed. I just firmly believe that we need to be honest with ourselves, with the market. I think we need to know what we're getting into. And, I think too many people get into business and then blame others for their lack of success. I'm here to help anybody whose values align with mine, honestly. And I'm sorry if that sounds overly selective, but I think I have that right. But
yeah, you do.
If anybody needs, I'm always available. I tell people all the time, people's arrogance keeps them from reaching out. And the few that have, I will do whatever I can to help you. I will do whatever. If I believe that you're doing the right thing, and I will, and trust me, there are people who I've helped who will tell you, like, I'll do more than you ever think I would or should, because I want to believe that there's other people out there who will carry the torch and who will do the things that matter so that my kids can be part of that. I'm not in this to just, salmon. I want my kids to be part of it. I want my grandkids to be part of it. And I want other people to be part of it. I just have certain values that,
non-negotiables.
I think I need to be a help. Exactly.
And it blows my mind. You were, like I said to you off air, you were easily the series that people contacted us the most about last year. And so many, particularly young men, contacted us and said, I want Martin to be my mentor. Like lots of people. And you're telling me nobody reached out to you. So folks, don't just contact me and tell me that you want to worship at Martin's feet. Like contact Martin, please, so that you can actually start a relationship. The man's busy, yes, but he's telling you now that he wants to hear from you. So it's in your hands. Martin, will you do us the great honor of signing off our Peace, Love, and Peanut Butter for this series, please?
Peace, love, and peanut butter.
Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Bye. Thanks again, Martin.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.